Welcome to Sage Advice. Today's guest has been described as a wordsmith, a magician, a copywriter extraordinaire, a lifesaver, and a badass. She helps people and the organizations that target them to develop their genuine personality brand by creating content that sounds like them and gives them the space to be truly yourself in your messaging. Her company is called More Than Words, the copy you wish you could write. Please welcome Danielle Hughes.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
It is such a pleasure to have you today and to have a conversation with you. And I'm curious about so many things about you, but I just want to get started with, what is a genuine personality brand?
So, we all hear about the term personal brand, right? And I think, when Instagram first hit the world and people were talking about everybody needs a personal brand, this idea of personal just didn't sit right with me because it literally means private. It's the definition of personal. And in my head, I was like, why are we asking people to share their private thoughts with the world? But our personality is who we are. It's like baked into us. It's always on display. And we have the ability to sort of dial it up or down depending on the situation. And so in the process of kind of creating my company and working on my own messaging, I had this realization that it should be a personality brand and not a personal brand. And that gives you control over what you're willing to share with the world and showcase what makes you special.
That's really revolutionary in the sense that I do think a lot of people have a deep resistance towards social media, towards sharing about themselves for that exact reason. I've never heard it articulated, that it feels like, well, I don't want to share things that are private and that are personal to me. So what kind of people do you work with in your branding work, and what do you do with them really?
So I work with people like of all disciplines. So I work with everyone from small like solopreneurs and entrepreneurs to full-on organizations. And essentially what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we become more human and create these connections professionally in order to grow our business, get elevated within the workplace, create stronger connections with our audience or our clients. So I work with people to figure out, what do you actually do? Right? Not what is your job title, not what does your resume say, but what do you actually do on a day-to-day basis? How do you solve the pain points for whoever you work with? And how do we shed light on that and how you approach that and make that something significant? Because we all, right? I'm a writer, you're an actress, right? There's millions of me, there's millions of you, but nobody does what we do in the way that we're going to do it and in the way that we're going to approach it. So I work with my clients to figure out, what do you do well that you probably don't even realize, that you take for granted, that other people recognize, and you're not making that bigger of a deal, and you should, right? Those are the things. Like if everybody is like, you're the most thoughtful person, or you're always on time, or you're super detail oriented, those are the things that we want to elevate in your messaging, because the right people are going to need that specific offering, and those people are going to be attracted to that offering.
Ooh, I've chilled. It sounds therapeutic a bit, some of the work that you do.
I have heard that it's like therapy. Yes.
What are some of the challenges that people come in with most often?
I mean, mostly it's, they don't know how to even like start, right? That when they write about themselves, it's formal, it's stiff, it takes them forever. They don't want to brag about themselves. So it's a lot of giving people permission, right? Like giving you permission to, like I say, go to Bragtown, population you. Like if you're not going to promote yourself and your business, who will? Right? Like you're not just going to get recognized for how great you are. Unfortunately, you have to do a little bit of the work to make sure that other people notice you, but we have to find a way to do it with balance. So it's finding clever ways. Like I tell people, clients often say, or I've been told, is like the backhanded way to say something you're good at, where you don't have to say it if you're uncomfortable. So it's like not going to Bragtown, but also a lot of people just are not even aware of the fact that you can put personality into your message and that doesn't make you unprofessional, right?
Mm,
Like those two things are not mutually exclusive. People mistake professionalism for formality when in fact you can be friendly and still be professional. And so we're trying to figure out where that sweet spot lies. And for everybody, it's different. My line might be very, very far away where it's like, I'll share all the things. Somebody
mhm.
else, it might be like, no, I'm going to literally go here, hand up, and then I'm not going to go anything else. So it's like finding where you're comfortable, but pushing people to put a little bit of themselves out there to create those connections.
It's really fascinating. And I guess as you're saying this, I'm like, ooh, what are the challenges that would come up for me in this work? One I think would be people pleasing, which is a challenge that I know, especially women face, and wanting to be the right thing for everyone because just in case, because I am and I can be. And like, what are you looking for? But what I'm hearing you say is you want to be very clear on what you're authentically bringing to the table.
And also you're not trying to please all the people, because if you please everyone, you're going to have nothing to stand for, right? And you're watered down your message. We can't please everyone. And we don't want to, right? You don't want to attract every single person in the world to your business, or it's overwhelming, right? So the right message should attract the right people, but repel the wrong people, right? So, and again, not offending people, but repelling, meaning someone's going to read it and be like, I don't think this person's for me. Good, goodbye. Someone else is going to read it and be like, this person's amazing. I need to meet them. Those are who we're working with. So it's a two-way street. And I think for a lot of people in business, they're like, I just need to attract everyone. And they forget that, like, but I don't want to attract everyone. I want to attract the right clients. I want these clients to be nice. I want them to pay me well. I want them to respect what I do. I don't want to attract the jerks and the people that are going to take advantage of me and the people that just need something done quickly, right? So it's trying to find the right people as much as making sure that those are the people that you also want to work with.
So is it fair to say this is not too far from like dating?
100%. I use that analogy all the time, right? Like, so yes, when you're on a date with someone, it's not just do they like me, it's do I like them? Do I want to see them again? Are they checking all my boxes? But also, right, when you think about writing like an online dating profile, right, people who write nothing, it's really hard to start a conversation with them if they've told you nothing about themselves. But people that answer the prompts and put some humor in there and tell you a little bit about them, you have something that you can immediately grab onto to start a conversation and relate to. And the same thing goes for business. You have to give people something to grab onto so that they can get the conversation started, besides just, oh, I see you do web design, I need a website, right? It's more than that. You're going to have a relationship with these people and you want them to feel connected to you in some way to deepen that relationship.
It makes me think about the times that I've been in position to hire someone. And I have noticed that as soon as you always give the opportunities, do you have any questions for us? When someone has really specific questions, it is that clarifying, like, this is a person who confidently knows what they want. This is a person who, is here to also receive something from me and is looking for a relationship, not, and you feel automatically like I can trust that person more.
Yeah, exactly.
What about for people who feel like, oh, words are not my thing. I just don't know. I don't know what my thing is. Is that a service that you offer, that you help them find the words?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is kind of constantly evolving, as my business coach likes to say, you listen to the market. So it's like, what are people asking for and what are people in need of? So I have specific materials that I use with my clients to get them to take a look at themselves. Like I have a questionnaire, I've got some materials that kind of makes them at least get the process started. And then we can craft the words together if need be. And then I also work with clients on like a workshop basis where we're going to do it in a forum to collectively together, showing examples. Right, before and after examples are always a really great way for people's brain to be like, oh, now I understand, right? Because we can talk about this kind of stuff all day, And, people in their minds might have one perception of what personality is, but then when they see it in action and they say, oh, that's actually very like straightforward and thoughtful and not as like personality driven as I thought, right? So there's like the scale. So it's really a matter of like, what does the client need? Where are they in their journey? Like, are they starting out and they need to think about everything from scratch? Are they rebranding? Are they just stuck? Or are they realizing more and more that they're not attracting the right types of clients because their message is so watered down or diluted or generic?
So I want to learn about you and
Okay.
what led you to be doing what you're doing.
It's a very long journey, so I'll try to keep it short-ish. I started out in corporate, like most people. I graduated from college, ended up in marketing at television networks, and I was writing marketing materials for sales to go out and sell programming. And I didn't love it at first because it's not what I wanted to be doing. I went to school to be an art director. I thought I was going to get out of school and go work at an advertising agency. And it just never happened for me. Then I felt like I was selling out because I'm just working on like business to business type stuff. And it wasn't creative and I wasn't using all of my tools. But for whatever reason, and maybe it's because I was a little resistant, my copy was always very warm and relatable and friendly, even in a B2B environment, right? I never understood the difference between business to business and business to consumer because the person at the other end of the line is still a person. Whether or not they're spending ad dollars for their client or they're spending their own money, it's still an emotional decision. And there's still something that needs to pull them and attract them. So I spent all this time in corporate and I did fine. I mean, I moved up the ladder somewhat, but I always tended to hit a ceiling. And I don't necessarily think it was like the glass ceiling per se. I think I didn't know how to articulate my own personality brand. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to say what I was good at. I didn't know how to get recognized. And so I ended up leaving corporate. I went to a small word of mouth marketing agency for a few years. And then I was a freelance copywriter. And I was very much like my clients in that I was just generic. I was taking whatever came my way. I was very fortunate that a lot of my clients were former coworkers and colleagues, and people came to me for work. But I was basically just kind of coasting along. I wasn't doing any marketing. I had no message. It was just, if you need content, I'll do your content for you. And at some point, the well started to dry up because I wasn't marketing and I didn't have a point of view. And if you don't give people a lane for which you're staying in, they don't know how to refer you, right? So I ended up hiring a coach who kind of worked with me on my own messaging and my own brand. And in the process of writing my newsletter, I stumbled upon this concept of personality brand, which was not like the goal. It was just a topic that I came up with one day and I was like, oh, there's something here. And I wrote about it and then I kind of didn't think about it. And then people kept talking about it. And then I was like, oh, maybe there is more to this. And then somehow in the past, over the past couple of years, this has now become my thing. But it really just came out of just writing, and it was just an idea in my head. And now it's become something, and the pandemic has certainly accelerated this need for human connection, right? And authenticity and humanity. And so I was kind of already doing that already. And so now I've just kind of taken that to the next degree, so to speak.
That's awesome. And I love how it sounds like this came out organically just from your practice of putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
And this idea came through to you. So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and about this moment in time where there's a big shift. A lot of people are looking for a new career path, or they realize they were not happy with what they're doing. What has that been like for you and your clients? And do you have any words of advice for people who might be making that big shift right now and are really scared about putting themselves out there?
I mean, I think it's going to be scary no matter when you do it, right? I mean, that's just the nature of trying something new or pivoting. I do think it is a really good time to try things. And I've definitely seen that in a lot of my clients over the past year and a half, 2 years. this is like the bucket that they're in. It's either the same thing that they've just felt like they've looked back at what they've been putting out there and it doesn't feel like them and it doesn't feel authentic to them and they're now acutely aware of it, or same idea, they want to try something new. And so that is, and I have a couple people that I'm talking to actually this week, and that's both of them are like kind of, they want to do a little bit something slightly different from what they've been doing, and they need kind of help articulating what that would be. What does that look like? What do they need? How do they position themselves? And, you know, for most people, it's so hard to see how your previous experience relates to your potential future experience. And I help them kind of connect those dots, right? Because even if you took a gap and you've been raising your children or your job is a completely different job, the skills that you've developed are going to be transferable to anything. And it's all just about positioning and figuring out the best way to highlight. You know, I like to tell my clients that you get to tell your own story and you get to tell people what's more important about what you've done. And you get to downplay the things that you don't really want to talk about because those are not relevant. So we have a lot more control than we think. And a lot of the fear that I find with people making switches is they feel like, but I did all these things and I don't know how those relate to what I want to do. And once they see that they actually do relate, it's like a big relief.
Therapy. I mean, it really just seems like really
Yeah,
useful,
a little bit.
practical therapy. And so I saw on your website, which is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
And what I love about it is you really do, I can see put in practice what you're saying about the authentic personality branding right there. So we'll put a link to it for anyone to check it out. And it looks like you have a few different courses as well. So people can work with you individually, but you have this standing out is the new fitting in, which I love, and how to write a kick-ass about page. Both of those things I want to talk about and I love, but the about page especially, because sometimes I think that seems to be kind of like the core place of what you're talking about, right? Someone's like, tell me about you. And the immediate thought is like, which part, at least for me, especially so much. And I'm sure you come across lots of multi-hyphenates. What about me? Which part of me? Like, how do I put it into a few paragraphs? So tell me a bit about that workshop. I think this one sold out, but you have another one coming up in February.
I do. And so in my opinion, the about page is the most important page on any website. It's actually the second most visited after most people's homepage. And I really think at some point we're going to get to the point where it's the first page, right? Because if you Google someone's business, you don't have to go to the homepage. You can go right to the about page or the services page. And again, when you're thinking about a world where there's so much competition for a service that you're offering, how do you as a business owner or a business differentiate yourself? And it's through you and what you want to share. And so it's again going back to what do you want to share, but what do you think your audience will want to see? Like what's going to matter to them? Because even if you've done all these things and you're a multi-hyphenate, that might be great for you. But if it has no bearing on what you're currently doing, there's probably no reason to talk about it. So you get to say, these are this is the reason behind my business, right? And your about page should always start with what I say, your brand positioning, which is like focused on your audience, focused on what you can do for them, showing them that you know what they're struggling with and that you have the answer. And then you get into your story, right? Here's why I started my business. Here's more about me. And again, we're trying to create connection. So you want someone to read your about page. And then if you have a conversation with them on the phone or on Zoom, there shouldn't be a disconnect there. Like you don't want someone to read an about page and then have a conversation with you and come away thinking those two people don't seem like the same people. You want your about page to be so you that when they get on the phone with you, they feel like they already know you. That's what we're trying to do, is already just establish that comfort level, that ease, that they just already have a sense of who you are. And it just makes it so much easier if you don't have to pretend to be something that you're not. Or if you have to think about, God, what was on my about page and what did I actually say? And how do I remember that those are the things that this person's interested in, as opposed to just saying, this is who I am, and basically take it or leave it.
I love that. Mottos for life as well.
Correct. Correct. You know, it's like you can't be for everyone. You can't worry about everyone. It's just, you know, finding the people that are going to be like, yes, you're my person. That's what we want.
That's fantastic. And so you work with larger companies as well. So
Mhm.
individuals and companies. And you keep saying this word brand positioning, which I love. I think I understand it as context. Is that correct? Is there
I
more
mean,
to that?
a little bit. So, I mean, you can call it your value proposition. You
Okay.
could call it there's another brand word. But essentially, it's 4 questions. Who are you? Who do you serve? What do they need? And what can you do differently? And also kind of how are you going to help them? So you answer those 4 questions and you get to like a positioning statement that
Mhm.
would basically kind of welcome people to your site and say, here's what I do for you, or here's what you're struggling with. Let them know that you understand, and then you can get into the rest of it. And it doesn't matter if you're, again, a business or a solopreneur, everybody should have a brand positioning, right? What do you stand for and what are you offering? And with an organization, this is 2 ways. So now I'm moving in more to working with employees at organizations, because a lot of companies, first of all, they're seeing mass attrition, right? They're losing a lot of people. And a lot of that has to do with people not knowing how to position themselves or advocating on their own behalf. And so they get frustrated and then they end up leaving. But if you can feel comfortable being yourself in the office and expressing what you're good at and talking to your team or your manager or your clients in clear language that lets them know what you're good at, chances are those things will get noticed and you'll end up getting the right assignments. So I'm starting to do more like internal branding as opposed to just helping the company with their own outward positioning to consumers.
So interesting. Just so I'm hearing so much about how this would be a tool to help you advocate for yourself in any
100%.
position, which is amazing. Even if you're like, hey, I'm in this position, I'm not getting the raise that I deserve. I
Yeah.
need the tools and the language to advocate for myself. Ooh,
There's a
so empowering.
There's a great quote that I use from Carla Harris. So she's I think she's one of the managing partners at Morgan Stanley. And she's a nationally renowned speaker. And she always says, your work doesn't speak for itself because your work doesn't speak. Right. In other words, like you can't just think you're going to put your head down and do a good job and it's going to get noticed, because your work is not picking itself off of your desk, walking over to your boss's desk and saying, look how great I am. Right. It's unfortunately or fortunately, we have to advocate on our own behalf and we have to say, this is what I've done and why I deserve to be recognized. And again, it is very hard for people, but it's like figuring out how do you make it so it's an easier conversation to have, or that you're more confident saying, you know what, I did all these pretty great things and I should be recognized for them.
Well, I imagine a piece of that would also be unpacking some of this sort of cultural mythology that we have. I'm thinking, especially as a woman,
Yeah.
but whatever your history is, that when you're like, wait, why am I not comfortable advocating for myself? I imagine there are some people, I know people, some people are like, no problem. And then others who are so fantastic and brilliant and talented, but like you were saying, they will be the last people to tell you. It feels like there is this mythology of like that humility somehow means you
Is an
just
asset, right? Like, yes, correct. That humility is an asset as opposed to ownership or pride, right? Yeah, it is very interesting. And I do think it is more female, although I work with a lot of like male, like engineers or software developers who, tend to be historically introverted. And I think for people that are introverted, it also is very hard to figure out how to articulate and advocate for yourself, because again, maybe you're a little bit socially awkward. You're not, you don't deal with, there's a reason you go into this, because you don't want to deal with people, right? You want to code and you want to work behind the scenes. And so then when you have to work with people, it's uncomfortable, right? So it is a lot of it, like the mental hurdle. And what I'm noticing the more that I work with, groups of individuals at organizations, is a lot of it is also just, you get so bogged down in the day to day of your job. It's hard to carve out time to say, okay, I know I'm like positioning myself as this. What does this even mean? Like, what do these words that are in my title or my job description actually tell people? And when you take a step back and you get off the jargon train, you're like, oh my God, like, this doesn't mean anything to anybody. And like, it's just showcasing value. So it's not even about bragging. It's like, how do you show value, right? You do such a great job. And how do you put that in a value facing way, as opposed to maybe a
Mm,
brag facing way?
I love
Yeah.
that. Yes, and that it's authentic. So even I noticed yours, you have a wordsmith, a magician, a copywriter extraordinaire, a lifesaver, and a badass. And honestly, from this conversation, exactly like you said, I'm like, those things all add up in very specific ways. It doesn't feel, I like that you said jargon train. It doesn't feel like a jargon train. And I certainly know, like I'm sure everyone knows when they've experienced, like, I'm just pulling words because I have to just say words about myself and it feels like totally jargon, but I can't give you an example of how this is like living out in my life. Then
Agreed.
find the exact wording sounds really empowering. That's so exciting. I'm
Oh,
so happy that we get to share you as a
thank
resource for the
you.
community, and we'll link all your websites and where people can connect with you because this is so valuable and empowering.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, I was even guilty of this myself, right? I joke that like, I'm not just the founder, I'm a client, because my old description used to say I was a strategic marketing copywriter. What does that like? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? So it's just,
Mm,
I think a lot of times it's just taking people and being like, how is this helping you? And do you really want to describe yourself this way? And wouldn't it be great if you could describe it in simpler language that you could talk to your grandmother about? That's what I always say. If you could read your job description to your grandmother and she understands what you do for a living, then you've won. If you read it to her and she's like, her head explodes, it's too much jargon.
awesome.
It's
Well,
awesome.
thank you so much, Danielle, for coming on Sage Advice. And it was just
Thank
a
you.
pleasure
I
to
had a great
speak with
time.
you.